In this tutorial, we'll talk about custom gradients that, well, HTML has got radial and linear on board. So I want to create my own. So let's go ahead where you introduce a program called Fireworks. So click here, plus go to, you type it in as part of the Adobe Suite package, Adobe Fireworks here. Just bring it up. Okay, it's going to take a little while. I should have done this before I started the video, but anyway, Fireworks gets used back in the day. It was used a lot of times to simplify images so that our pages would load. Most websites need to load in roughly I think the average is 1.2 seconds, or people just move on. So back in the day, there's a couple other things we could do with Fireworks. You can do image maps, etc. But what we're going to do today is simply go ahead and create our own personal custom gradient. So let's go ahead and show you how to do it. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is just create a Fireworks document, PNG. Okay, again, I've got mine in inches. Determine the size that you want. There you go, good enough. Okay, so I want this kind of size. Let's go ahead and create a simple square. Now, eventually there's a bunch of shapes. Please play around here with Fireworks with all the things that you can end up doing. Okay, so really quickly, this is my my saved settings. Let's go ahead and start to play some games. Okay, obviously, first thing I want to do is you've got two options when you're talking about a vector shape in Fireworks. You've got a fill and you've got a stroke. Okay, this outside on. So let's go ahead. I'm going to drop this stroke down to something at least smaller, to about 1. There you go. And there you go. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about our options. First, obviously, is color. I can pick any color, but I can do the same in HTML, so no need to discuss it here. Next thing I want to talk about is gradient fill. So by default, you've got a couple things you can do. Okay, so you can go ahead and select the type of gradient and then the type of color. So let's go ahead. Here are my options in gradient. I get radical, linear, cone, coner, satin, starburst. So let's look at a couple of them. Okay, guys, starburst, folds, whatever. Let's do folds. Okay. So next thing I want to talk about is, hey, Korea, I need a little more than just two shapes. So if I want to add different colors, I simply click here in this color wheel area, click, and by default, hey, nothing's happened, right? Because the computer puts in the color that it thinks it should be. Simply click on that color and then select what it is you want. Click on here, done. Go ahead, select it red, or do whatever you want to do. Okay? Hey, the red was a big mistake. Simply click on the marker, drag down, and you get rid of it. So let's go ahead. I don't want it white. I want it to be yellow. There you go. And I'll add one more color. Okay, since we're talking about color, remember transparency is also a color. So what we could do here at the top is transparency. So let's go ahead, click here. I can add a transparency. Click on the little marker, and I drop my opacity to 0 so that it sees through colors. Okay, again, the same thing. I want to delete it. Simply click and drag. So you can start to have custom gradients that have, besides the various shapes you've got the basics in HTML, but you then go ahead and create whatever you'd like here. Okay, so say I'm happy with this. The next thing I want to do is I want to control my gradient. So by selecting, if you don't have it already, you'll see that I've got a little square here, and depending on the gradient, you'll get different controls. This allows me to control the gradient. The first one is the distance to make the transition go from one to another. Obviously, the rotation of it. And then obviously I can take this. This will move the center of my gradient. So again, you can just go nuts. Play, do whatever you want. Again, this is just one of the many options you got. Hey, I don't want folds. I want bars, ellipse, ripples. Give me waves. Again, you'll get that same gradient control, and then there you go. Okay. So the other thing I would just simply want to talk about is you can add a texture or grain to it. So I want, I don't know. Again, there's a 120 on it. Let's do oil slick. So now I can put this texture on top of it. Okay, again, I can control this texture as I so choose, but just as added plus to it. Second thing, guys, is just by chance I would talk about patterns here. Hey, Korea, what's the big deal? Patterns are like photos. I've got, again, another 100 and whatever shapes I've got here. Coarse orange, cloth gray, whatever I want. What's the big deal? Again, the nice part is, even though it's an image, I can control that image with these gradient controls. Okay, so again, I've generally, depending on the image pattern you got several options. This doesn't show up well. Let me find something that's corkboard. Nah. I don't want to spend too much time. Again, I got to limit these videos to 15 minutes because that's what YouTube will give me. But anyway, let's go ahead here. Boom, dots, and then I can control it as I so choose, giving me as many or as few or an angle as I get. Okay. The other thing I would talk about is stroke. We sort of talked about that. It was that pink outline we had before. Let's go ahead and make it a little wider. Okay, good. Now you get some options here. Again, you got felt tip, random, 3D, toxic waste, paint splatter. Just knock yourself out, whatever. Okay. Again, it doesn't look that good, but at least it gives you some options that you can have: pencil, crayon, dash, double dash, hard dash, or whatever you want to do there. Okay. So, say for example, this is God's gift. I want to save this and I want to use it on my web page. Sure, no problem. You've got a couple options here. Simply, hey, that's what I want. File. You can export it, and then you can go ahead and export image only. Generally, you want to be JPEG. By default, you can also save as a PNG, portable network graphics. So that's also an option. The reason why I say just go ahead and save it as an image, as a JPEG, is, well, let's talk about it. File. Let's say file, save as, and I can go also save this as an image, okay, JPEG or whatever. But the problem is, this is the issue. Fireworks puts that unified.fw is the name, so just call it gradient or whatever, ABC. It doesn't really matter. Gradient, okay, and then PNG fireworks. HTML will not recognize the name, whatever you call it, .fw, .png with that extension. So that's all you got to do. Okay, we'll call save it. I'm gonna save it to my desktop. Save, done. Okay, now the rest of it should be simply a review. Hey, Mr. Korea, I want to throw that on my web page because that's God's gift. No problem. So go ahead here. I'm going to go back to my page here because I've got this saved. Superman. I'm going to do gradient, and then the image that I create in Fireworks with my custom gradient, I can just throw it in as my background. So Control S, refresh, explore. Let's get rid of Superman and get my gradient. Oops. Did I spell it right? No, I didn't. Okay, guys, here we go. Here's our problem. Again, that's why good thing I mentioned actually. What happened is, even though I thought I saved it, it wanted to put that .fw. So right click, I'm going to rename this gradient. I thought I had erased it when I saved it, but maybe I didn't. Okay, there you go. Now I'm good to go. Again, because it can't recognize it, so let's go back to my web page, refresh, and oh, this mistake isn't gradient. Did I spell it right? Gradient. Oh, my mistake. It's PNG, portable network graphics, not a JPEG. Control S, and then the clips with my web page. Okay. The next video, I'll talk about how to deal with this tiling, control my background images. But again, create my own custom gradient. I can go ahead, throw it in, and I can use it as a image in any HTML command. Okay. So custom gradients with Fireworks and throwing those images back into HTML programs.